But next, we got Out Front with Nikki Woods. She has Lamar and Ronnie Tyler, the force behind Black and Married with Kids.com. How you doing, Nikki?
Hey, Al. How are you? Hey, everybody.
Hey, Nikki.
Actually, we only have Lamar today. Ronnie was feeling a little bit under the weather, so we are sending her well wishes, but we definitely want to get into it. One of the most difficult things I think about the holidays is really navigating the whole family situation. And when you add to it being a blended family, it could get even more difficult. And I know I'm a big fan of Black and Married with Kids.com, and they talk about blended families and how to make the most of it and really how to bring it all together a lot. So I definitely wanted to have them on to talk about the holidays in blended families. Welcome to the show, Lamar.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
No, absolutely. So let's just start with what is the biggest piece of advice that you can offer to especially new blended families during the holidays?
Sure, that's a great question. I would say the biggest piece of advice that I would offer is do what you can and accept what you can't change. And I think a lot of times that's what's so hard for people because they don't like the way things are going. They don't like interaction between the kids and the step-parents. The step-parent doesn't like what's going on between the kids and the biological parents. You don't like the other co-parent that's coming into the situation, but really do what you can, accept what you can't change, and give your kids permission to enjoy the other household and their family members while being away from you, because sometimes we put our kids in the middle and they feel like almost like I'm being a traitor or like I'm doing something wrong if I have fun over dad's house or over mom's house, and then when I come back home, then how are they going to look at me? What are they going to ask me? I'm letting the other parent down. So kind of get them permission to enjoy the holidays on their own.
Now, I think that's a big one, and especially I think as your kids get older, I have, we're a blended family, and I have a son that's 16 and a son that's 14, and really like giving them more control over the situation, I think as they got older has helped us a lot. So them determining like when they want to go, what kind of time they want to spend, as opposed to me dictating or their father dictating, has been a big piece of it for us. What about extended families with blended families like, grandparents and that sort of thing? How much say do they get in this whole situation?
That's tough. Now you want to start asking me the hard questions, Nikki.
Let me tell you, the way my mother and my ex-mother-in-law is set up.
Right, and especially I think you even see more of that in the black community, because in the black community, our grandmothers, right, our mothers, there's a closer connection in our community than there may be even more so in others. And they may be a little more vocal than they are in others as well. But I think that is the job of, if it's my mother, if it's, my grandmother's, my side of the family, it's my responsibility to make sure they respect my family structure, to make sure they respect my spouse, to make sure they respect my situation. And not really putting, your family, your kids, your spouse in kind of like the headlights of being able to have to fend for themselves and feeling like you let them down. Because already enough in blended families, it's hard being in relationships, period. It's hard being in marriage, period. But then when you put the blended family situation on top of all of it, that's a whole other story. So, I really would say just remembering that for that biological parent, it's tough for them because a lot of times they feel like they're being torn in the middle between their spouse and between the kids, right? Because they don't want to let the kids down, but at the same time, they don't want this relationship they have, this love they have to kind of fade away either. And it's tough for the step-parent, because a lot of times the step-parent feels like they're on the outside looking in. And they got this connection, they got this, tight-knit family, and I'm not a part of it. Yet I'm here. Yet I'm doing everything. I'm spending the time. Spending the money. I'm spending the resources, whatever it is. I'm giving my heart, but I'm not always receiving that back.
So let's talk about overcompensation, because I had a friend, and gift giving almost shut the entire Christmas season down for her and her blended family, because she felt that her ex was overcompensating by giving a lot of gifts, a lot of expensive gifts, because there was not the amount of time spent during the year. So how do you even negotiate gift giving in a blended family?
Sure. Well, I would say I'll give you the best case scenario, and then sometimes some people's real scenario too.
Okay.
In the best case scenario, right, it's not about competition, it's about collaboration. And you should be hopefully able to come together early on, kind of set a spending budget and stick to it. I have a friend in the Chicago area who just this week, I saw him on Facebook talking about how his ex-wife just bought their daughter a horse.
Oh, my.
A horse Nikki, like a full, not My Little Pony.
Oh, my.
I mean, like horse with hay and all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
He's like, this is just totally against everything in his nature, right? But at the same time, I realize that when people have conversations about blended families, a lot of times we make the assumption that, you know, these are functional relationships you have with the other co-parent. But sometimes it's hard to have functional relationships with dysfunctional people, if I can be real with you.
Sure.
So, like I said, if we can, in a best-case scenario, just kind of setting a spending budget, being able to communicate about what we're spending on the kids, and then being able to really stick to those.
So where can we start? Because, like you said, there's a lot. There's so many layers to this, just in starting with the relationship, and then all the pain and the hurt that may have gone into the dissolution of the relationship to now having children. Where do blended families start if they have conflict that needs to be managed?
I would say reach out to resources and help. And what we've seen is that there are not enough resources for blended families. We actually did a movie called Blended, The Unspoken Truth About Step Families,
right,
for this reason, right? Because when you just go do a Google search on communication or infidelity, money, right, issues in marriage and relationships, all these different topics and sites and resources come up. Nowhere near a fraction of that do we see in blended families. And then in the African-American community, because we have a higher divorce rate and a higher out-of-wedlock birth rate, a lot of times when we get married for the first time, we're bringing kids into these relationships. That's what happened in our family between me and Ronnie. So just really taking a look at it, just really making sure we get resources, our hands on books and tools, and knowing that we are not alone. And when we sat down and when we started talking to different couples, we realized that we all had the same story. But for some reason in blended family relationships, there's a mask that we hide behind. And we pretend like everything is okay. And we go to work, we go to school, we go to church, go whatever it may be, and pretend like our family is good. But then as soon as we get in the car or as soon as we get home, all hell breaks loose. So really just being open, being transparent, maybe getting with other families that have your best interest in mind, other couples that have your best interest in mind, and beginning to really communicate, talk about what's going on, and equip yourself with the resources and tools.
So what if the biological children and the stepchildren are all in the same household? So they're a blended family for real. So you have children coming, from both sides of the relationship. How do you navigate then, the treatment of the children, I guess? Because one of the complaints that I've heard, and I saw this actually on blackandmarriedwithkids.com, is that, sometimes the children don't feel like they're treated equally. Really quickly, because we're running out of time, how do you navigate that?
I think as a couple, you come together and you have conversations behind closed doors a lot of times about what will happen, about how the kids are being treated, about how they feel. I think you also have to make sure you're spending time alone, even in a new relationship, with your kids, with your biological children, so they don't feel left out. And then also the biological parent should be the one that's leading a lot of time with discipline and with correction and things like that, as the step-parent kind of comes in as a supporting role until that relationship is formed.
Awesome. I know, JJ, you had a question?
I did have a question. I also have a blended family, and the one thing that I've kind of been struggling with as of this year is my daughter always goes home to see her dad for Christmas. And that's how it's been since we divorced, since she was 4. She's 11 now. And so I've never had a Christmas with my daughter ever. And this year, now that, and I also have a boyfriend and he looks at her like a daughter, it's like, gosh, I kind of want her to be here for Christmas. But how do you navigate that when this is what it's always been?
Yeah, I probably would start by having a conversation with her and kind of getting her take on it, right? Because the thing you don't want to do is you don't want to force a situation to where she's there with you, but she hates the fact that she's there with you.
Oh, yeah.
And really wishes she was, with her dad and where things always are. So I think I would probably sit down and start the conversation and start, kind of talking about, what you would like to see, the fact that, hey, you would love it if she spent this Christmas with you. And then let her, almost like Nikki said before, let her feel like she has some type of voice in the situation before that decision is made.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Thank you so much, Lamar. We appreciate you being a part of the show today. Thank you so much, Nikki.
Thank you. Make sure you check them out, Lamar and Ronnie Tyler on blackandmarriedwithkids.com. You guys have a great weekend.
You too, Nikki.